biking in suburban Washington, D.C., bashing his head severely enough that he was held overnight at the hospital for observation. Justice Roberts was released without further treatment. America is listening to Fox News.
Oro magunom, matana lom suman kumin healthy and niceness. Karangin kumniki matsaye nakshike sinjing ganyan fashil klon masenge. Inwang tagayani and wang napashali, matana lom suman. Akayakom, ace mongle, ashosh, kamofal, esukumines be vitamin nasum. Karangin gupsifena and niceness in dia apashali. O about to kungom som na yen, tia kalmotom, inflame, inwelum, eaknas na siyen kumatakyan. Inaksafye akola. Arela emergency contact list lom, aroy nash mo yaknas nas kaonlo in lomsuman, nakarangin in jash mit masin lomsuman. Aro makuno minako ye aknas na siyen kuam in nasnas aim safe. Nanakmanas, matana in lomsuman. Message saying e masin manyatlu, Micronesian Research Center at Choice Broadcasting.
After months of downplaying the severity of the coronavirus, Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro has tested positive for it, saying he's now being treated with hydroxychloroquine and expects to make a full recovery. More than 65,000 Brazilians' deaths have been blamed on the virus. President Trump sending the formal notice that the U.S. and its money are withdrawing from the World Health Organization over its response to the coronavirus pandemic. Texas Republican Congressman Michael McCall telling Fox News.
I think the president's sending a message. It's a one-year notification, so in a sense, Tracy's putting them on probation until they can get their act together. I think we need a leader at the WHO who cares more about global health than appeasing the Chinese Communist Party.
Congressman McCall also charges that China is using cyber espionage techniques to try and steal U.S. research on a coronavirus vaccine. So if it proves to be successful, they can claim it as their work. Wednesday will bring more closings in Florida over the virus.
Reclosing restaurant dining rooms in Miami-Dade County is not a popular decision despite the high spike in coronavirus cases and hospitalizations. And now a demand that gyms close again is being reversed.
People, when they go in the gym, they must wear their mask. They must wear their mask all the time. If they have to do something strenuous, then they have to do it outdoors. And so the gyms are going to remain open, but under a new set of rules.
Miami-Dade County, Florida Mayor Carlos Jimenez, banquet halls and short-term rentals are still being forced to close in Miami-Dade. In Broward County, Florida, Eben Brown, Fox News.
Several theater chains in New Jersey are suing the state for forcing them to remain closed while other businesses have reopened. President Trump's point man to North Korea meeting in South Korea with officials there about the stalled nuclear diplomacy, with North Korea still saying it has no plans to resume a dialogue with the U.S. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumon, or call 646-1463.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña is taking your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair. Mezcla is ready to serve you and your family for your dine-in experience and takeout services. To ensure everyone's safety and comfort, Team Mezcla has taken further steps in maintaining a clean and sanitized area for you and your family while dining in. For more information, please call 479-2652 or 479-2653. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Hafadade, this is Carl from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future. Whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community, our dedicated team in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. The only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I start the program that way every day as an indication to those out there in our international radio listening audience and newcomers, abundant as you probably are, that the Tall Tales program is a Constitution-centered, conservative, a little bit libertarian font of wisdom here in the Western Pacific. Tall Tales is the top-rated afternoon FM radio talk show in the entire Western Pacific. We work hard to keep that rating, and we're going to work hard to maintain that rating. Right, Real Joe Cruz?
Every day, sir, twice on Sunday.
There you go. Twice on Sunday?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. All right. So from the Seventh Amendment, as we're the Second Amendment, I'm always on the lookout for news stories concerning the Second Amendment, those who would take it away from us, gun control fanatics, good news about the Second Amendment, and related stories. Well, I have a related story today dealing with the so-called Castle Doctrine. And I have in front of me a paper, actually a paper from the Superior Court, a motion to dismiss. And it's the people of Guam versus Anthony Gregory Mendiola. And the caption of the case, or the motion is called People's Motion to Dismiss Without Prejudice, Charge 1, Murder. The people of Guam respectfully request leave of court to dismiss Charge 1, pursuant to blah, blah, blah. The magistrate judge found probable cause for all three charges at the magistrate's hearing, yet there has been a significant change in the understanding of existing evidence since the day the case was charged and brought before the magistrate judge. Defense counsel asked the magistrate judge to dismiss the matter based on Castle Doctrine and in part the government Castle Doctrine in part, and the government objected to a Castle Doctrine-based dismissal because it was then believed that the defendant followed the victim into the home and that the victim was shot in the back. New information came recently to the people of Guam in the form of police reports and a medical examiner's opinion. The new information indicates three crucial facts that were not known previously. The defendant was actually inside his home when the victim entered the house. Witnesses overheard the victim appearing angry and yelling profanities outside the defendant's residence as he made attempts to enter the residence and then entered the residence, and three, the victim was shot from the front. In other words, he wasn't shot in the back. Previously, the people of Guam objected to defendant's oral motion to dismiss because Castle Doctrine did not apply under the then existing set of facts. Currently, the facts as applied to Charge 1 do engage the Castle Doctrine. The people of Guam know that the Castle Doctrine is a bar to prosecution, and as a result, Charge 1 is barred. Defendant is also being held on $50,000 cash bail. The issue of continued incarceration or release conditions should be addressed as soon as possible so that all conditions may reflect the case as it will stand after dismissal of Charge 1. The news story says that in addition to murder, Mr. Mendiola was also charged with maybe this news story doesn't. Oh, yeah. still being charged for illegal weapons possession. So he still has that's not a lightweight charge either. But it's not murder. And for murder, if it's murder one, can put you away for life without parole. So that's certainly good news for Mr. Mendiola. And I suspect that a certain portion of the international radio listening out there is sitting there saying things like, yes, or all right. This would be a certain group of pro-Second Amendment folks that stumped for the Castle Doctrine and would also stump for its expansion. So before the Castle Doctrine came along, a defendant in a criminal case would have to show that in the face of danger, he retreated before he used deadly force. Castle Doctrine says if in your home, your car, or your workplace, you don't have a duty to retreat. So judging from the sketchy reports that we've seen here, Mr. Mendiola might not have been able to skate had it not been for the Castle Doctrine, because the news reports don't go into anything other than the so-called victim, whose name was let's see, I got it right here. Oh yes, Joey Zamora. The sketchy news reports say that Joey Zamora forced his way into Mendiola's house. Now, if Joey had just walked into the house and started mouthing off to Mr. Mendiola, Mr. Mendiola would not have a self-defense, would not be able to avail himself of the defense of self-defense. So anyway, this story has worked out pretty well for Mr. Mendiola, because the way the Castle Doctrine is worded, the dimensions of if you can bring yourself within the ambit of the Castle Doctrine's strictures, it's not an affirmative defense, it's a bar to prosecution, a little more heavy duty. So much for the Second Amendment. Let's go now to the Zemi Ikotny. And once again, there's some things in life you apparently can really rely on, like 2 + 2 = 4. The ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter is pi, 3.1416, etc., right? And that the Daily News will not run a local editorial. These are things that you can rely on. Today, we have Dr. Pierre Corey and Dr. Paul H. Mayo, who have authored an editorial that's titled, "More of Us Need to Wear N95 Masks," going on to say, they're the way to block aerosol transmission. I'm not going to spend any time on this. You know, it's this whole...
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
This whole mask thing, Real Joe Cruz, looks like a cover-up.
You're right, sir. You know, I've tried wearing one of those N95 masks, and I can barely breathe when I'm wearing it. I feel like I'm going to pass out.
Yeah, well, anyhow, the longer we do this, the more I'm convinced that we have been the victims of a gigantic hoax. And, you know, we were supposed to have something like 7,000 dead on the island and 25,000 cases and on and on and on. It just hasn't happened, and I don't think it's going to happen. It's kind of like a lot of other things that come along, you know. This is not a very good comparison, but I'll make it. Measles, you know, measles will make you sick. I'm especially wary of measles. I've had measles, fortunately, but had I not had measles, I would have been wary of measles because I wouldn't want to have my handsome face turn strange with a lot of red spots on it. But we learned to live with measles. You know, measles happen. I don't know what it's like now, but when I was a kid, every year we'd have our annual measles epidemic, and kids that hadn't got measles would get it. The health officer would come along and nail a big yellow and black sign on your front door that says, measles, quarantine. And you had to stay home until you got, you know, until you got better in a couple of weeks. And then next year, the same thing would happen. And measles it can be deadly. It can kill you. Not very often. But I think we're going to have to make the same accommodation here with the Wuhan virus, that we're never going to be able to wipe it out. We're going to have to learn to live with it, that some people have greater vulnerability to it than others, that that it is relatively easily communicated. We haven't decided yet whether someone who's asymptomatic can communicate it. We haven't decided yet whether an infection creates an immunity and how long the immunity is. But we have determined that it isn't going to be the Black Plague of the 21st century. We're not going to have corpses piled up in the street, which is kind of like the mental image that all of the experts created when we started on this. So I kind of share Real Joe Cruz's feeling on this. I don't think I want to hear any more about masks other than to make outrageous plays on words, saying this whole mask thing is just one cover-up. Yeah. All right. So then we have the Post, which day in, day out runs local editorials. Day in, day out usually runs good local editorials. Today, turbulence lies ahead for our community. With the way unemployment claims process was set up, it's been difficult for displaced employees to file for unemployment benefits if they can't get validation from their boss that they were furloughed or laid off. Okay, well, at least the Post has started out right. The pronouns that they're using are they and their. The antecedent of those pronouns is the word employees. Employees is plural. It can take a plural pronoun. They've done this twice before, so I'm really happy to say that see that they didn't say it's been difficult for an employee to file for unemployment benefits if they, which is the mistake that they made again yesterday. So they're off to a good start. As reported recently in the Guam Daily Post, there are workers in our community who have been unable to complete their application for jobless benefits because their employer did not report them as laid off or furloughed employees. Workers who are paid by the day and don't have a formal employer-employee relationship with the people who hired them for temporary jobs are also struggling to get their unemployment claims completed. The magnitude of this problem has yet to be fully quantified, but it exists in our community. We know there are households that have been struggling and haven't received unemployment benefits because they're stuck in the process and have been unable to file the required paperwork, such as pay stubs and certifications from employers. We hope the Guam Department of Labor will be able to work out a solution that would bring economic relief to these workers soon. I'm going to reword that sentence. let's see. The director of labor must work out a solution that would bring economic relief to these workers soon. Let's hold people accountable here at Guam Daily Post, and let's not engage in precatory language. Paperwork aside, these displaced families, including children, are suffering even more as more weeks and months go by without being able to tap into the federally funded assistance for displaced workers. Another challenge that lies ahead is the prolonged stagnation of our tourism industry, which has around 20,000 jobs directly tied to it. July 1 was supposed to be the beginning of Guam's tourism's comes back. As the date approached, new Wuhan virus cases caused its indefinite postponement. Without the resumption of most flights from Japan and South Korea, Guam's tourism industry will remain in hibernation. Based on the schedule the airlines have provided, no significant tourist flights are expected to resume throughout this month. The longer tourism remains on hold, the more challenges our displaced workers face, even those who qualify for unemployment. Of the 945 a week in unemployment benefits, 600 will be cut off at the end of the month, unless Congress passes legislation to extend it. Without tourism's rebound and with the unemployment benefits soon reduced to a third of the amount displaced workers have received, our community is in for turbulent times. It's not certain if our elected officials are fully prepared and have planned for this next stage of the economic fallout from the Wuhan virus crisis. Potentially a good editorial of Guam Daily Post, but you pulled your punches. We hope the Guam Department of Labor. It is not certain if our elected officials. Let's hold their feet to the fire, okay? All right, so much for Zemi Ikladny. I got a long message here on Facebook. I have to take a minute and read. On behalf of all Tall Tales and its honorable host, I hereby present a Facebook Live.
It's a star, sir.
Star?
Yeah, Facebook Live star.
I can't find the rest of the text.
Let me see if I can find
yeah,
it, sir.
I think I got it here. Joe Cruz, on behalf of the Tall Tales and its honorable host, I hereby present a Facebook Live star to James Howard for his continued vigilance on being informed and super sarcastic. Be it now known on this day of July 8, 2020, that the aforementioned gentleman be given full access to all things the point. Here. So this was awarded to him by the legendary real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir. James Howard is he's a staple when it comes to all things the point. He's on in the morning. Most of the time he's the first.
Uh-huh.
And he's on in the afternoon with us.
Wow.
So, and he's been crying for a star, so I figured I'd give him a Facebook Live star.
I see.
Which is not really the coveted blue star, but that may pacify him for a while.
Well, maybe it does. Maybe you could give him a research assignment.
Sure, he's down, sir.
Yeah, ask him to do some research on what authority the real Joe Cruz has to award stars. Can you ask him to find that out?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I kind of like to know that myself. All right, so a Facebook star went to James Howard. He's been jabbering about that on Facebook for months, right?
Yes, sir.
I'd really like to have a blue star, you know, especially when I give a blue star to something other than the editorial of the day, right?
True, sir.
Yeah. Well, okay. All right, so that's it for Jimmy Cudney. Let's take a peek at the card and see what we have on the card. Well, I've got the usuals. I've got Troy versus Janela, which is at 53. It's been 53 days now since the Paco Pronunciamento.
Latin, sir?
Spanish, I think.
Oh,
yeah. The Paco Pronunciamento saying that Janela didn't need to apologize because when the lieutenant governor said that she and Carlo Branch should apologize, Carlo Branch apologized and took the blame for Janela, and that this was sufficient. And the Paco Pronunciamento told us that henceforth there would be no more muting and cutting off of reporters in mid-sentence. So it's been 53 days, and Janela has not engaged in that kind of activity. Then we have Tina versus Emergency. We're back to zero. We're back to zero because there's a news story in today's Post. Candidates weigh in on primary races. And this is a good opportunity for the Post to give their favored candidates a lot of earned media, which they apparently did. And then at the very end of the story, Speaker Tina Munia Barnes called for a Wednesday emergency session on Bills 374 and 375, as well as on Senator Kelly Marsh's Bill 330. Now, I don't know who they mean by Senator Kelly Marsh. Is there a Senator Kelly Marsh in the legislature, Real Joe Cruz?
I don't think so. I think there's a Kelly Marsh tight to know.
Oh, okay. Maybe they forgot to put the in the news story, huh?
Sir.
All right. As well as Senator Kelly Marsh, tight to know, Bill 330, which seeks to allow absentee voting during a state of emergency or when there's a disease outbreak, such as the ongoing Wuhan virus pandemic. Okay, so we got 374 and 375 and 330. 330 had a public hearing on the 15th of May. Gosh, I wished I'd have been paying more attention. I would have liked to have gone down there for that one. However, while the Speaker waived the public hearings on the two primary election bills, so the Speaker waived the public hearing requirement on 374 and 375. Now remember, in order to waive a public hearing, this is what the Speaker must find. I can find it here. Yeah, let's take a short break and come back to Tina Rose Munia Barnes.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, when you absolutely need confidentiality in your real estate transactions.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So we have a statute that says no bill can pass unless it's had a public hearing. I think we all know what a public hearing is, but there is an exception at 2 GCA section 2103 subsection A. No bill may be passed by the legislature unless it has received a public hearing, except that when the presiding officer certifies that emergency conditions exist involving danger to the public health or safety, the requirement for public hearing may be waived. So that means that once again, Tina has detected an emergency conditions involving danger to the public health or safety. Now, what would that be? You know, more often than not, what Tina has detected is the inability to plan ahead. So, you know, it takes, if you decided today that you wanted to have a public hearing, it would take you a week to get your proper notices out to conform with the open government law. So that means whenever you see one of these emergency declarations, it means that the Gang F-15 have not been able to plan ahead for something that's going to occur more than 7 days ahead. So they have to waive the public hearing requirement so they can get everything done, quote, on time. So now they want to waive the public, as you were, waive the primary election. And this is in their mind, not having a primary election is something that involves danger to the public health or safety. Now, you know, you can make some really BS convoluted arguments. Well, you know, the virus, we don't want to expose people to the Wuhan virus. So it would be better not to have the primary election. So, okay, well, let's stop and examine that. 2 factors: Wuhan virus, primary election. How long have we known that when the primary election was going to be? I think probably over 20 years. We established that the primary election would occur on a particular Saturday with a date. A long, long time. Now, this Wuhan virus is a real surprise, right? We just found out about that yesterday. Is that right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we didn't know any. We ever heard of a Wuhan virus until yesterday. Therefore, it's an emergency because we couldn't deal with it. It's an emergency. Thanks for blowing that horn.
You're welcome, sir.
Yeah. Because we've known about the Wuhan virus since March. So, you know, if people at the legislature had the ability to look at what's going on and then plan ahead, they could have been doing this months ago, literally months ago. But instead, they waited until we know who the candidates are, and then we decide, well, now that we know who the candidates are, let's go in and fix things so our favorite wins. Okay, now, the irony here is that the last time that we went through this same charade, when Tina Rose Barnes saw an emergent dimension in waiving the public hearing requirement for 3 bills that would provide double pay for government employees. When they came into session the next day, the committee chairman, Joe San Augustine, said, let's recess for a week so we can have a public hearing. Shows you how tone deaf Tina is when it comes to detecting emergencies. Well, what is that? What is it that George Santa Anna said? Those who do not understand the lessons of history are doomed to repeat them. It's happened again. Tina has waived the public hearing requirement on those 2 bills They met briefly today, a couple of times. You know, a 20-minute meeting, a 3-hour lunch, another 20-minute meeting to recess until next week, so they can have a public hearing on those 2 bills. So much for Tina's ability. You know, I think the legislature needs to change that statute. Tina is just too trigger happy on this and is using what ought to be used very rarely as just a matter of convenience, having little or nothing to do with emergencies. Okay, let me see what I got here. I've got another Joe and Jimmy. Boy.
Usual suspects.
Yeah, the usual suspects. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Okay, Bob, it's called to my attention. It's curbside voting for the Manamku. You know, you can adapt that to say, hey, anyone over the age of 50, just to protect you, just in case, you're gonna be able to vote on the curbside, and they could have this special, you know, the whole sidewalk could be full of social distancing tape and disinfectant wipes, and while we're at it, you can have a special disinfectant sprays of all sorts, and
this would kick in for people of what age again? Another Joe?
You know, just to make it, you know, to be.
You mentioned an age for Kirk.
Maybe 50.
50?
Maybe starting 50.
Yeah.
You know,
I'll tell you what, another Joe.
What's that?
I'm over 50, and I don't need no stinking curbside voting.
I'm just saying, look, about just, you know, to make people feel more comfortable, right? It doesn't have to be in a building in confined spaces. They can have it, you know, they can spread it out. And if they don't come up, if they cannot become expert at this now, what makes them think they're going to be expert at this in the general election in November? And for that matter, if they think that people are afraid now, right, and there's good reason not to have this, why would they not be afraid in the general in November?
Well, if people are not afraid now, then the governor has to take notice of the fact that people aren't afraid and start up another campaign to scare the hell out of people, which is what she did at the beginning. And that'll work, right? Then we can scare everybody, right? And if we scare the hell out of people, fewer people will vote, and it'll be a lot easier for the election commission.
And the thing with the public, I'm not familiar with the protocol or the you know, the distinction between the Guam Election Commission and the legislature, but I had the impression they're autonomous, and they run the show based on their professional opinion and their expertise, and the people that consult with.
The legislature, are you talking about?
No, the Guam Election Commission.
Their expertise and their professional opinion?
That or those who they consult.
How many election commissions do we have, another Joe?
I only know the one.
Me too. And you're talking about expertise and professional opinions? I thought there must be two, because that certainly isn't the one that I've been observing all this time.
I better be careful and tread carefully in this one, because but it just seems as though, you know, it's almost like a foregone conclusion. So really, they're just going through the motions. It's okay, we have to put a certain number of days before the public hearing, right? But we already know the conclusion, right? We already know how they're gonna vote, right?
Do we?
I mean, what? I mean, that vote. What testimonies they're going to follow, right? I'm guessing they're anticipating that no one is going to say, "Hey, let's go ahead and have this primary." Most people are going to say, "Oh no, I'm afraid. I'm so afraid. I'm not going to be afraid in general, but I'm so afraid now." And you guys are not good at this now, but you'll be so much better in the general without practice. I don't understand.
You know, another Joe, I usually get enough chance to jabber on the air about the things that I like and don't like and the things I like to see and don't want to see, et cetera. But I'm really tempted to go down to that public hearing. I think this is the dumbest idea that I've seen in a long, long time, to say, oh, we can't have an election even though we started the wheels in motion. We know who's going to run. We know who the candidates are. But now we've decided we really can't have an election. That is horrible.
Okay, Bob, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
During the primary, do they allow write-in candidates?
They do.
During the primary?
Yeah.
They do?
Yeah.
See, so what? We can't have, if they had a primary, so they, since you only have 15 senators on the Democrat side, I guess they figured, well, we're set, right? We don't have to worry. And so, why even have to worry about a primary? Well, I mean, look, what are the chances that someone might say, you know what, I got a better idea. Let me write in someone's name, someone that's not on there, like maybe former Senator Bob Klitzkie. No, he's not a Democrat. He's a former Senator. Robert. Oh wait, he's running for Congress. So some other senator they can come up with that. Oh, Senator Guthers, Senator Dr. Judith Guthers, or Senator. Some of these past senators that, or write-in Senator B.J. Cruz, or he's probably gonna say no. Of course.
You know who usually draws the most write-in votes?
Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse.
Exactly. Yeah.
but seriously, Senator.
And rightfully so.
We only get this chance once every 2 years, right? Now you're saying that now we can only do this once every 2 years. At least replace it with something like you said before, a convention.
If we don't have a primary, then that's what we'll get, conventions, and we'll be back to the smoke-filled room.
At least we have participation of the people.
You don't, without the primary, you don't have participation. You have
exactly.
You have, and especially in a midterm election, because the governor is, without trying very hard, the most powerful person in the political party that she represents, or excuse me, they represent. So a governor is not going to want to run the risk of running into a lot of hostile senators during the midterm election. So the governor is going to say, a Democrat governor is going to say, these are the 15 people that are acceptable to me. The rest of them can go fly a kite. So, you've taken that dimension of the senatorial race off the table. All these people who say, "Oh, the parties should pay for their own primary." Well, if we don't have a partisan preliminary party election, there will be no primary. We'll go back to the smoke-filled room. Another Joe.
It's just terrible what's going on. Bob. That's not. You get a real feeling that's not democracy. That's not allowing for people to participate in their government.
Well, when you cancel an election after you know who the candidates are, when you start discussing, when you introduce a bill to cancel an election after the candidates have come forward, that is not democracy. That's the so-called cancel culture operating in the election. Yeah.
And so if they want to do this, they should do this for the next election, a year or two in advance. And while they're at it, if you're going to take away the primary in a year or two, have plans for a convention, right? You
can't, Joe. There are some things you can do with legislation. There are some things you can't do with legislation.
Yeah.
So if we don't have a primary, the parties will choose the candidates however they want to. And that's and for show, that would be a convention. But as a practical matter, it's going to be the party big shots who determine who the candidates are. Primary election is important if we want to have real choice as to who our senators are going to be. The other day when I was talking about this, Ken Leon Guerrero's won for doing away with the party primary. And my response to that is, if we didn't have a primary, there's no way that Ken Leon Guerrero could get on the general election ballot, because he's an iconoclast. He's not one who's going to adhere to the party line. So they'd say, no, we don't want that guy. We can't control him, which is exactly why people like him, which is exactly why he'll get through the primary election. But he would never make it if there weren't primary elections.
See, Uncle Bob, you're one of the old guard, right? You're the old bull elephant that has the long memory. And without that, people are doomed, as you say, to repeat history because they're all youngins. You know what I'm saying? I mean, compared, you're well, 30 years ago, you know, you'd already experienced this like maybe twice before. Whereas people now, you know, people in their 60s now, they were only in their 30s 30 years ago. So, like, even the riots, it seems to be like every 30 years, the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, then the 90s, the LA riots, and now, again, riots. It seems that people are going in like 30-year cycles and making the same mistakes because, you know, maybe we should put a date from warning 30 years from now. Watch out for these anarchists rioting in the year.
I'll tell you what.
2050.
I'll tell you what, another Joe. If I were the Ayatollah here instead of just a talk show host, if I had absolute powers, my rule would be nobody can sit in the legislature unless he's got some gray hair.
There you go. Okay, good. Well, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. I'll just keep listening.
Thank you, another Joe. So we had Jimmy on the line, but Jimmy's got a,
Yeah, he didn't want to wait, I guess.
Yeah, call back, Jimmy.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Are you or a loved one in need of wheelchair transportation? Do you have a medical appointment or family event you don't want to miss? At Access Medical Transport, they offer wheelchair accessible service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available at your convenience, let them help you get to your destination. To learn more about their wheelchair transportation service, contact them today, 646-6970. At Access Medical Transport, they treat their patients like family. Thank you, and be safe, Guam.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. They're open in Agotna. They're ready for dine-in, takeout, and delivery services from Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Call them now, 479-2652, and get your Mezcla fix today.
Okay, so here we are back again. Got about 10 more minutes till halftime. Luckily, I have the opportunity to chat with the legendary Jimmy. Good afternoon, Jimmy.
Oh, I'll try and be brief. But, you know, your card, I think that's a boxing metaphor.
It is.
And I can give you the outcome of Tina Rose, Munya Barnes versus the card every time. I can give you the outcome.
How does it come out, Jimmy?
She's going to lose because she leads with her chins. Okay,
Jimmy, would you think that maybe she's got a glass jaw?
Yeah, she probably got a glass jaw as well. But
thank you, Jimmy.
I promise to be brief.
Thank you very much. Classic Jimmy. Yeah, okay, well, back to Tina Rose Munya Barnes, who Jimmy says is going to lose every bout because she always leads with her chins. Okay, so, you know, once again, she had an eagle eye to spot those emergencies to health and safety. And I have a sheet here that Ray worked up this morning. What was the source of Ray's poll, Real Joe Cruz?
It was an online poll, sir, on Google. He set it up.
Ray set it up?
I believe so, sir.
Yeah, because he had a couple thousand responses, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I'm not vouching for the statistical accuracy of it, the size of the sample and the sample selection, et cetera, but he came up here with a ranking for 20 different candidates, and I noticed that Tina Rose Munya Barnes ranked 16. So let's see, if you are 16, if that's where you finish in the election, you finish 16, there are only 15 seats in the legislature. So if you finish number 16, you're not going to be in the legislature. If you're not in the legislature, chances are you're not going to be speaker. So Tina, based on what I'm looking at here, runs the risk of going from speaker to the street. So trying to analyze this here with a relatively short time, Tina's performance and her willingness to declare these emergencies of danger to the health and safety of the people and waive public hearings. Now, she's done it 6 times just since I started to count. 6 times. So it's probably a good thing, because if she hadn't waived the public hearings 6 times, she probably wouldn't be 16th, Real Joe Cruz. She'd probably be even lower than that.
True, sir.
Because I think the public really likes to see a speaker waive requirements for public hearings. So I suspect that this is one of the ways that she sought to make herself more popular with the electorate, is by waiving public hearings. All right, so that's that item on the calendar. Tina Rose Munya Barnes versus emergency. And then we go to
Okay, sir. He didn't actually make the survey. It was just dropped to him. It was given to him by someone who made it.
oh, okay.
So
All right. Well, yeah, Ray's a clever fellow, pretty tech savvy, so I wouldn't put it past
and
him.
he's also not completely done with the results, so I guess it's still ongoing.
Okay, so maybe Tina being 16th isn't quite accurate.
Maybe, sir.
Yeah. All right, then we have Janella versus Troy. And I mentioned earlier, Janella versus Troy, we're on day 53. So Janella has really been doing good about kind of keeping her nose clean, so to speak. And then next on the card, we have Louise Munya versus unemployment. And I got a caller on line 1 here, our Fred. Reminds me, boy, here it is, almost 1700, and no call from our Carl yet. I hope he's okay.
I'm sure he is, sir.
Yeah. Good afternoon, our Fred.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Doing great, Fred.
I want to keep this as genuine as possible, this conversation.
Okay, Fred.
So, let's lay down the foundation. So, genuinely asking, so when Tina waived the public hearing or the right to public hearing, isn't that the same as Janella muting the reporters as Tina would mute the public?
It has a similarity, doesn't it, our Fred? Yeah, it's cutting the public out of the process.
Right. So it's a move to mute the public. So, I mean, you have a lot of credentials, Bob. So how does the public, I mean, is this what the public wants? No public hearing?
I don't think so, Fred. It's certainly not what I want.
Okay, so are the senators doing this as a voice of the public that we don't want a hearing? I'm just genuinely asking.
I think that the genuine answer to that is that they see it as easier for them, for the reasons that I mentioned.
Aren't our lawmakers supposed to be the voice of the public?
We would hope so.
Okay, so then that brings me to that the public doesn't want this hearing without or this legislative session without a public hearing.
Right.
We don't want that. We don't want that. So how do we go about saying we want a legislative hearing or legislative session with a public hearing? How do we go about doing that?
The way we do that is as we get closer and closer to the election, we use our voices and we tell all and sundry, I am not going to vote for Tina Rose Munya Barnes because she has canceled too many public hearings. I want public hearings.
But do we have to? You mean the public, the 175,000 people, can't do anything about it to stand against a legislative session?
The remedy is at the polls, Fred.
But that's in November, though.
Yeah, it is. Gosh, we don't know how many more public hearings she'll be able to waive between now and November, right?
So that means lawmakers can go about and waive the primary, even though the public wants a primary?
If they pass a bill and the governor signs, or if they pass a bill and they override the governor's veto, they could do away with the primary election.
Okay, so where the public's right comes into play?
Well, and this is, I suppose, the thing that's tough about democracy, because the public's remedy is at the polls. You get a chance. You get a chance to turn the rascals out every 2 years. Just like when we had the great smash and grab in 2014, where the Juan Pat 10 jumped in and gave themselves huge retroactive raises. There wasn't anything we could do about it then. They sat to the end of that legislature and through the next legislature, but 7 of them lost their seats in the next election.
Mm-hmm.
So
that means we're going to stay in a communist state till November.
Well, we do have the ability to try to influence the process by what we say, what we talk about, etc.
Yeah.
Or Fred.
Didn't they had the session today already, right?
They did indeed.
They did.
Gotta go, Fred. I got the big halftime show coming up.
Okay. Well, talk about this. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, Fred.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The Chief Justice injured. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. It happened more than 2 weeks ago, but the U.S. Supreme Court just confirming that U.S. Chief Justice John Roberts was injured in a fall, suffering a head wound that required a trip to the emergency room and an overnight hospital stay. Justice Roberts has suffered from seizures in the past, but doctors say lightheadedness caused by dehydration was likely to blame for the fall back in late June. President Trump at a White House education dialogue yesterday saying he wants schools to reopen.
We want to get our schools open. We want to get them open quickly, beautifully in the fall.
The administration pointing to a report from the American Academy of Pediatrics that says the risk of keeping kids at home outweighs that of sending them back to school.
Some districts say they want to open next month, but details aren't totally clear yet. Will students come in at different times and at least part of the time continue to engage in distance learning?
The models that come forth with social spacing
immediately suggests that it's not going to be possible to have all the students in the building at the same time.
Dan Domenech, director of the School Superintendents Association, says each district is working on the plan. President of the National Association of School Nurses, Lori Combs, says plans should vary depending on how bad the virus is.
Fox's Jessica Rosenthal, the president, admitting there could be political motivation for some cities or states to keep schools closed. But Education Secretary Betsy DeVos telling Fox's Tucker Carlson tonight.
Kids have got to continue their learning. There is no reason to withhold education, full-time education.
Secretary DeVos says her department would consider withholding federal education funds from districts that don't reopen. A teacher who went to prison for what she called a love affair with a 6th grade student has died. Mary Kay Letourneau later married him. She'd been battling cancer. She was 58. Following a down day on Wall Street, Asian stock markets closing Wednesday mixed, Dow futures trading lower. America is listening to Fox News.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Brothers but branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumon, or call 646-1463.
A showdown is brewing over calls for renaming American military bases that honor Confederate figures.
Included in a $694 billion defense spending proposal is $1 million for the U.S. Army to rename installations, facilities, roads, and streets that bear the name of Confederate figures. The Democratic-led House Appropriations Committee bill also includes a 3% pay raise for military members in addition to billions for other defense-related programs. An amendment requiring name changes for several bases was added to a defense policy measure approved by the Republican-led Senate Armed Services Committee. President Trump opposes renaming those bases and has threatened a veto if the provision is not dropped. Jared Halpern, Fox News.
President Trump welcomes Mexico's President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador to the White House today to celebrate the new U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau skipping the meeting over potential U.S. tariffs on aluminum made in Canada. You may never make it into space, but soon you can smell like it.
A perfume maker has unearthed from the files of NASA how space is said to smell and is ready to start manufacturing fragrance in bottles. The project managers of Ode to Space say they needed to go through lots of red tape, including filing requests under the Freedom of Information Act to find out how astronauts described sense of being in orbit. Those previously unseen files suggest space can smell like burnt-baked products, hot metal, and fried steak. A crowdfunding effort with a goal of a couple $1,000s is now nearing a take of $400,000. Contributors are getting a free bottle. Eben Brown, Fox News.
Federal prosecutors unsealing an indictment against an alleged hacker from Kazakhstan, charging him with an array of computer crimes. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña is taking your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair. Mezcla is ready to serve you and your family for your dine-in experience and takeout services. To ensure everyone's safety and comfort, Team Mezcla has taken further steps in maintaining a clean and sanitized area for you and your family while dining in. For more information, please call 479-2652 or 479-2653. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his Smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his Smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Pafade, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Boy, what a finale. That halftime show just gets better and better every day. It's probably one of the greatest entertainment pieces here on radio here in the Western Pacific, our halftime show on Tall Tales. So we finished the first half. Now we're heading into the second half. And Frenchie brought up a couple of interesting points here that I was gazing at during the halftime. Frenchie says, funny how people who do not like the voice of the people and suddenly wanted, worried about the money being spent on an election, well, they spend like there is no tomorrow on personal travel, junket trips for all kinds of minority many groups. And I could add to that, they were so quick to figure out how they could do double pay for employees, et cetera. $400,000 to send a group of people to play in Hawaii called FESPAC, on and on and on and on. Senator Raging Lee and Senator Kelly Marsh, Titano, going to New York to talk to the United Nations, all on our nickel. That's okay. But when it comes to an election, we got to save some money on that election. And then the other thing that Frenchie brought to my attention, and he's absolutely right on this, if we hadn't had a primary last time, how much chance would Michael San Nicolas have had of getting on that ballot? Somewhere between 0 and none. Because, with no primary election, the party bosses would choose the candidates. So who are you going to choose? Madeline Bradallo, who has been a good, loyal party Democrat ever since, or Michael San Nicolas, who's a young whippersnapper who doesn't come to heel for anybody. Whether people like it or not, he marches to his own drumbeat. And when it came time for the party's loyalty pledge, Michael San Nicolas said, I'm not going to tell people, I'm not going to sign that. I'm not going to tell people they should vote for Democrats unless they think the Democrat is the best man. So a guy with Michael San Nicolas's independence would have never gotten to the general election in the absence of a primary. And of course, we could see that when it came down to primaries, the only people that liked him were the voters. The party bosses didn't like him. It was only the voters. So they gave him the Democrat nomination, and he was able to win the election. So moving on a little bit here, back to Luis Muñoz and genuine mistakes. The only thing that I guess I could add to Louise's situation today is that I was listening to the radio, and I heard on the radio that David Del Isla say that filing for unemployment benefits and omitting income from your application can be a federal felony. Now, I suppose there's a mens rea requirement there. You have to intend to do it. So perhaps a prosecution wouldn't lie if it were a genuine mistake. But it is a serious matter. And I think John Q. Public thinks that people who are senators ought to be able to handle serious matters, heavy-duty matters, without making any mistakes at all, even if the mistakes are genuine. So once again, I happen to have the poll that Ray brought forward this morning, and I'm looking down the poll here. Ray lists the top 10 candidates, and I guess there aren't too many surprises there. There's James Woke Moylan, Therese Terlahi, Frank Blas, Tony Atta. There's something about Mary. Right, Real Joe Cruz?
Sir.
Mary Torres?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. There's something about Mary, yeah. And on down the line. Then I get to the second 10, and I see Sabina Flores and Chris Duenas and number 14, Kelly Marsh, Titano. And I keep on reading until I get down to the last name on the list. Louise Muñoz. So when I saw that, I thought, Louise Muñoz, she's an incumbent. Incumbents almost always do well on polls this far in advance of the election because they have such an advantage as far as name ID is concerned concerning the challengers. For instance, you take Dominic Hernandez or Vincent Bora or Vinici John or David Duenas. These are not household words. They don't have the same name ID that 15 incumbents do. So I was surprised to see Louise Muñoz down there at number 15. Number 20, out of the money. So if she's number 20, I guess there are two possible explanations. First possible explanation, it could be a mistake, but if Ray made a mistake, Real Joe Cruz, if you and Ray made a mistake this morning, I know for sure it would be a genuine mistake.
Thank you for that confidence, sir.
Yeah, I just know that for sure. Or the second thing is that the people who responded to the poll were saying, Louise Bora Muñoz, isn't she the one that didn't know that if you got you're a $55,000 salary, you can't get unemployment insurance? I'm not going to vote for her. So she's number 20. So the bad news for Louise Muñoz is that she's number 20 on the poll. The good news for Louise Muñoz is that the poll doesn't go any lower than 20. All right, so let's put Louise Muñoz aside here for the moment. I have a phone call here from James Woke Moylan. Good afternoon, Jim.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm just getting used to my new initial, but yes, good afternoon.
Yeah.
Nice to hear you.
Well, I understand you folks in the legislature can kind of pick whatever name you want. I'm not sure what the convention is. Maybe you have to put woke in parentheses to make it legitimate.
I prefer not, but...
just let me try that on and see how it works, Jim, okay?
Okay.
James,
my name?
James Woke Moylan.
Now you're going to make my nameplate even bigger, and I prefer it not that be that large. Thank you, though. Thank you.
All right.
I'm sure you heard about our session today and how that all went. And
Yeah, you guys got to chill out, Jim.
All right.
I mean,
okay.
you know, life's too short to just burn yourself up in these sessions that last so long. Think of your family, your wife, your children, and things. You can't spend all of your time down there. How long were you in session today?
Total time, I wouldn't say long at all, but the breaks were much longer. But what that brought me back to think about was an old bill I introduced. I think it was 265 months and months ago, and that's about part-time legislature.
Yeah. Now you got something.
And that's what I'm. Eventually down the line, and I would like to see more people run for legislature. And I think it's difficult when we say that it's a full-time position, and of course the public is generating their own what they see and how things are going with this current situation. Maybe we can be a part-time legislature, and I think we definitely can, and we should, because then to me that would allow more people the ability to run and keep their day jobs as well. It's difficult to find and ask people to run for Senate, because they tell me that, why would I leave my current job? All these meetings that you guys have, and then you recess and so forth. Why would I want to do that when I'm fine where I'm at? But the important part is that the legislature makes these decisions that impacts the people's lives and businesses, and that's why it's important we have the people in there with like your callers and like many people out there that have opinions, and I'm glad they voice it on social media and also on the radio and giving their opinions on printed media as well. But more importantly, if they could come out and run for Senate, maybe a one term as a part-time legislature, and do the things that are important to them, and then get back to their real jobs. So, as we move forward, and hopefully I will get into the 36, I'm going to continue to push for that. And hopefully we can get support on this next body to have it either voted, or we have a referendum and have people vote on it on their own. But I think we really need a part-time legislature.
Well, Joe, excuse me, Joe. Jim, you have a soapbox. You have that soapbox in the trunk of your car. You have the ability to go to pocket meetings, to party meetings, etc. You have the ability to grab a microphone and start preaching that sermon.
Yes, and which we will continue to increase that. And as things move forward, I think we'll gain more support. I won't let that go, and if I'm back into 36, that's a push. And if we can get the majority, I think that that's the party's push as well for part-time legislature. So hopefully that this all works out for the best. But no, I won't let that go at all.
Okay, Jim.
Okay.
I much prefer your energy being spent on that than on your wokester bill here, dealing with bias-motivated crimes.
Understood, and I see your position, and yeah, I'll get to that eventually. But right now, I do agree to focus on the part-time legislature moving forward for the island of Guam, and I hope that will be the majority of the people would agree with that as well.
I'm just looking at this bill right now, and it says a person commits a bias-motivated crime if by reason of the actual or perceived, and then it goes on a laundry list of identity groups, and then it says job or occupation. So when I read that, what it means to me is that if I'm down at King's having breakfast, and somebody comes along, say, and punches me in the nose and says, "You're a radio talk show host. I hate radio talk show hosts," that would be a hate crime.
As interpreted, yes. I can see
probably
that.
Should be.
But not for tall tales. That's going to go on for forever. It's gonna be.
Well, okay, Jim. I'll tell you what. I'm going to go easy on you today because you said the right thing here. You said part-time legislature.
Right. Yes.
So you must.
That's a goal of mine.
You must say part-time legislature the way I read the Second Amendment every day.
Okay, and then possibly my middle initial could be Jim P.T. Moylan.
It's a possibility. You got to work on it though. As of right now, it's W, but you could turn it.
Okay, but show me the proof, right? I understand.
Exactly.
All right.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome. Cheers to that, sir.
All right. Yeah, the legendary James Woke Moylan. Yeah. A person commits a bias-motivated crime if, by reason of actual or perceived, job or occupation. That could even be, bush cutting, right? He's out there with his bush cutter, and somebody else comes up and throws a rock at him and hits him in the face. And the bush cutter says, "Why did you do that?" And the guy says, "I don't have a job, and I hate people that have jobs." Anyhow, Jim said he's going to concentrate on part-time legislature, so we'll give him a little bit of slack, Real Joe Cruz.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, a little bit of slack.
And even that's very lucky to get any slack around here.
He's darn lucky. Slack is hard to come by on tall tales. Yeah. So, I'm going to be like my friend Jimmy. I'm going to be from Missouri. You know what the state motto of Missouri is?
Sir?
Show me.
The show me state?
The show me state. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Next on the card here, Jim the Wokester versus the unemployed and the franchise. Well, I guess I spent enough time with the unemployed, but back to the franchise. Now, Jim's bill would do away with the primary election, and Tina was willing to allow that to come to the floor without a public hearing. That could have been a career-ending event for Tina, because in a democracy, hard to find anything more sacred, and I'm using that word advisedly, sacred, than elections. So when you take people's ability to vote away from them, that doesn't sit well with people, even if it's going to save money. Even if people, don't have to put their masks on and go to the polls.
It's always amusing to see when they decide to save money.
Yeah.
The timing of when they decide to save money.
Yeah, timing's perfect here. They want to save money, but they know they can't because it's too late, right? Yeah. So horsing around with an election after the candidates have been identified, as I mentioned before, this is not a good idea. As an example, Robert versus Michael San Nicolas versus Will Castro. So if we didn't have a primary election, this is what would happen. All three names would be on the ballot of the general election. Now, I've opined earlier that this would be an advantage for Will Castro because it would split the Democrat vote. But I checked the Organic Act last night, and guess what? The winner of the Washington rep election has to have a majority of the vote. And if not, then 15 days later we have a runoff election. And I think the chances, given three candidates, Robert and Michael, Robert and Michael, as far as I can tell, will run pretty even. The party faithful, the loyalists, etc., will probably vote for Robert. The young Turks, the younger generation, the new voters, etc., and a lot of Republicans will probably vote for Michael San Nicolas. I think Will Castro, even with that advantage, probably one of the three will get a plane ride to Washington. Will Castro will get a one-way ticket to Palookaville, and that'll be it for him. But Will Castro will draw some votes. So Will Castro draws some votes. St. Nicholas and Underwood run pretty close to even. No majority. No majority, runoff election. So you got to go through the basic drill, even though there are only two candidates on the ballot. You got to go through the whole drill, printing ballots, poll watchers, the whole thing. How much money have you saved? You have, nickels and dimes. So, as I said earlier, if this hearing is in the morning, I don't know what time they're going to schedule the hearing. I probably shouldn't say anything, or they'll schedule it at 4 o'clock, just to keep my big mouth out of that session hall. But I'm really tempted to go down and testify against this bill. It's not a good bill. And as I mentioned yesterday, the kinds of discussions it causes should not be the kind of thing we're talking about close to an election. Well, if we change this, who does it help? If we change that, who does it help? How about if we change this over here? Well, yeah, that'll help him over there. We don't want to do that. We want it, if there are changes in the election law, the word neutrality has to be very important. It has to be done in a neutral manner, far enough from the election so that you wouldn't be able to easily determine who would benefit from the change and who would suffer from the change. Not like we're doing it now. We know who the candidates are. We even know their positions on the ballot. Oh, yeah. But, we ought to cancel the election now. Wuhan virus, this is something we couldn't have anticipated before. It'll save money. Okay, so much for that. Next item on the card, I've got Rory versus the ratepayers at the Port of Guam. Rory Respicio. Now, I've spent a lot of time taking you all the way from the day that Rory had his first meeting with the board of directors from the port, which I have now renamed as the Board of Spelunkers because they cave in so easily.
Settlers and spelunkers.
Yeah.
And settlers.
Settlers and, settling, spelunking. So Rory was just dead set to get the Port 7 back to work. He appointed Connie Shinohara to a special task force to make sure that justice was done for the Port 7. Connie on very short notice resigned, and as if by magic, Warren Wolf was ushered in to take over Connie's old job as deputy manager of the port. Warren Wolf, better known as Luis Baza. And as time went on, when the Bernadette Stern Mano case was to come before the Civil Service Commission on, boy, that hearing has already passed. I didn't see anything about it in the paper. On July 2nd, who was going to go and represent the port at the Civil Service Commission? Warren Wolf, better known as Luis Bada, better known as the Wolf. He was going to go up there and represent the port. But that never happened because Warren put together a 12-page memorandum to persuade the board to settle with the last four members of the Port 7. So he laid it out, his term, what the terms would be, etc., and the board approved it. That was a couple of weeks ago. So, the sense was that the Wolf would have the opportunity to go out and negotiate with the four. Well, once again, he was the Wolf. He was the fixer, just like Warren Wolf in Pulp Fiction, the guy that you call in to without even breaking a sweat, solve the problem. And I know that the problem was solved because I'm looking at a release from the port of Guam. And it announces the passing of a port employee. Unfortunate, right? The typical condolences, etc., concerning the death of the port employee. But guess who put out the press release? Can you guess, Real Joe Cruz?
It's a tough one, sir.
I'll give you a hint.
Okay.
Her initials are Bernadette.
Nice.
Yeah. So down at the bottom here of this press release, Bernadette Mano, Marketing Administrator, Port Authority of Guam. So she's already back to work. It's interesting how long that case popped along until the wolf, until Rory brought in the wolf. And just like in Pulp Fiction, the wolf got to the bottom of that problem and solved that problem in a heartbeat. And it's hundreds of thousands of dollars wrapped up in the wolf settlement. And if Bernadette Mano is back to work writing press releases, then we can assume that the other three are also. All right, so much for that. It's time for the seventh inning stretch.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Are you or a loved one in need of wheelchair transportation? Do you have a medical appointment or family event you don't want to miss? At Access Medical Transport, they offer wheelchair accessible service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available at your convenience, let them help you get to your destination. To learn more about their wheelchair transportation service, contact them today, 646-6970. At Access Medical Transport, they treat their patients like family. Thank you, and be safe, Guam.
So, seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field, Chicago, and now we're back to the historic studios of The Point in Upper Tumum. We've got about 25 more minutes till the end of the show today. So I'm going to go back into something that I've started, and I never seem to get very far with it, but it starts out with Ryan Calvo versus Protehe Litexen. And you'll recall that Ryan Calvo said that he used the phrase domestic terrorist cell groups and caught some flack from the Republican Party. I jumped in and said, I know what he's trying to say. Obviously, he's over the top. Obviously, he overstated his case. Obviously, Tall Tales talks about these groups like Protehe Litexen and the separatist movement. The separatist movement composed of people who want Guam to separate from the United States and become an independent, sovereign country with no ties to the United States. Now, there is a small but articulate and vocal group that fit into the definition of separatists. And I've got some of their papers here. I started out with Laura Souter versus America, and Laura wrote a column in the Sunday Post, And I've read it, I've started it a couple of times, but I'll pick it up kind of in the middle. She says the title is Celebrating July 4th as Self-Determination Day. And every time I see that self-determination, I have to take a minute to tell you that this is a hoax, this whole self-determination, decolonization thing. It's not about Chamorro self-determination. It's about independence of Guam and a Chamocracy, a government of Chamorros, by Chamorros, for Chamorros. I mean, maybe you like that. My pitch on this is be honest. Don't come forward with this self-determination thing when you know that statehood and free association are will of the wisps, and that the only real choices for Guam are to continue as part of the American empire or to become an independent nation. And I said a million times, if what we ought to do, if we really want to get serious about political status, we need to have a referendum that would have one question on it. Do you want Guam to become an independent nation, a sovereign independent nation, independent from the United States? Yes or no? And I keep saying that if we had that kind of referendum, I wouldn't care who got to vote. Even if I didn't get to vote, I'd be in favor of it. But to keep dancing around with this idea, well, you know, Chamorro self-determination and, you know, the Spanish and on and on and on, and we never got a chance to make our choice when there is no choice. The choice is independence or where we are. And if the choice is independence, it would be somewhere between extremely difficult and impossible to implement unless you chased everybody off the island who is not Chamorro. So the beauty of this Chamorro self-determination dodge is that it allows those who advocate independence to remain on the government payroll as they voice their independence propaganda, because there aren't very many jobs for independentistas here on the island. So they work, I guess they hold their nose and they work noses, and they work for the colonizer's government, which is what the government of Guam is a government established by, using their own rhetoric, the colonizer, which is probably, if you really want to get at somebody, you really want to call somebody a bad name, call him, say to him, you're a colonizer. But you better be ready. You better put your dukes up when you say it, because them's fighting words. Nobody wants to be called a colonizer. So Laura talks about the 4th of July, and she says the 4th of July activities are likely to escalate the pandemic disaster that will leave in its wake more deaths and debilitating illness than we can imagine. People celebrating the 4th of July. This reality has surely dampened the celebratory spirit. Then she goes on to say, far less visible, but equally brutal is the reality that we are reminded of every July, 4th of July. So what she, you know, on the one hand, she says this coronavirus is really bad. 4th of July activities will make it worse because the disease will spread, and it's really, really bad. But then she says, less visible but equally brutal is the reality that we're reminded about every 4th of July. And I've commented on this word brutal. That's a heavy-duty word. It's not a word that you lose, it's not a throwaway word that you use lightly. And then Laura says, it's the painful fact that we on Guam remain a colony. That's as brutal as the thousands of deaths caused by the Wuhan virus. It's just as brutal. Okay, well, let me see if Jimmy, are you still on?
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hello. Yeah, are you talking about colonization?
Yeah.
I think this island is being colonized by trash. You look in the newspaper. You see a lot of pictures of white goods in the trash.
Wow. We should,
on the back roads.
Yeah, maybe we needed a statute that says before you throw away a refrigerator, you got to paint it brown. Otherwise,
Yeah, maybe.
Otherwise, it looks like white supremacy, doesn't it?
I don't know. Anyway, I'll be brief again.
Okay, Jimmy.
Talk later. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Well, that's our Jimmy. You know, if you are somebody like Winston Churchill or Jimmy, who really has a way with words, you don't need to use a lot of them to make your point. Okay, so Laura says that the painful fact that on Guam remain a colony, that's equally brutal. He says medical experts are predicting that if people don't stay home or practice social distancing and wear masks, the 40,000 plus cases confirmed in the U.S. each day could go up to 100,000 daily. The 4th of July activities are likely to escalate the pandemic disaster that will leave in its wake many more deaths and debilitating illness than we can imagine. Okay, and then she goes on to say, far less visible but equally brutal is the reality that we are reminded about every 4th of July. It's the painful fact that we on Guam remain a colony. Same thing as thousands of deaths, illness, etc. Yeah, that's pretty brutal, Laura. Yeah. And she goes on with more of the same. And she picks up on the Declaration of Independence. As Independence Day has been on this week's agenda for American citizens everywhere, let's reflect on the principles and rights penned by Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence and adopted by Congress on July 4th. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. I give Thomas Jefferson a pass. It should be inalienable rights, but probably back in his day it was okay to say unalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What do these words mean to us? And of course, the us, is who, Real Joe Cruz?
We?
Our people.
Oh, our people.
Yeah. We have been taught that the United States was founded on the principle and the right of self-determination. I didn't know that. That's one that kind of snuck up on me. The right of all people was founded on the principle and right of self-determination. This right of all people was confirmed by the United Nations General Assembly 200 years later in the Declaration of Friendly Relations, which was unanimously adopted in 1970. The United States was a leading signatory. All people have the right freely to determine without external interference their political status and to pursue their economic, social, or cultural development, and every state has the duty to respect this right in accordance with the provision of this chapter. Okay, so there's a problem here. As someone living on Guam, do I have the right to pursue economic, social, and cultural development? Is the government interfering with me? Not until we came along with this Wuhan virus thing. That's when it started. So Finally, in the last paragraph, she gets to Confederate flags and monuments memorializing those who fought to split the Union and keep slavery intact are tumbling down daily. As Americans are confronted with these historic contradictions, we should seize the opportunity to take a new look at this age-old principle and confront the inherent contradictions which complicate our quest for self-determination. Maybe you could sign up with Black Lives Matter, Laura.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont or call 646-1463.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumont. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are. Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. Me and R. Carl strolling around the grandstand, wondering where all the horses are, and wondering how much longer it'll take us to ride down the home stretch. But we've got R. Carl riding his own horse this time, so we could probably do it twice as fast. So go ahead, R. Carl.
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in. I keep hearing this thing about self-determination. We were given a chance for self-determination. We have a representative form of government, and our chosen representatives represented us with, in advancing our relationship with the United States. And, and the fact that there was no rebellion or protests out in the streets or mass letter writing campaigns, in the newspapers complaining about how awful, that our representatives came up with this relationship proves that my mom and her generation, the occupation generation, agreed with what was done. As you mentioned, the children even collected money to send representatives to Washington, D.C. and seek citizenship. So I just find it ironic, that they keep saying that we were never given a choice. We were given a choice. They just don't like the choice that my mom and her generation made, and that's why they want to replay.
Well, I'm assuming you caught Laura's assigning brutality to the situation that the people who live on Guam are being subjected to right now.
Yeah, that's really, her choice of words really is inflammatory.
So
when you look at the...
So she uses, she uses the fact that Guam is a colony, this brutality of Guam being a colony as being as bad as hundreds of thousands of cases of the Wuhan virus and the deaths. And then at the end she says, Confederate flags and monuments memorializing those who fought to split the Union and keep slavery intact are tumbling down daily. As Americans are confronted with these historic contradictions, we should seize the opportunity to take a new look at this age-old principle and confront the inherent contradictions which complicate our quest for self-determination. So is this sort of a rallying cry? Kind of like you see what's going on in the mainland? You see people tearing these statues down? So, maybe we tomorrow night we ought to get a gang and go up to George Washington High School and use a spray can and write racist on the side of the building. And, we ought to probably tear down the statue of JFK. The statue of JFK up at JFK High School. And LBJ, LBJ Elementary, that probably should be vandalized also, because obviously LBJ was a racist. So maybe we need to, as she says, as Americans are confronted with these historic contradictions, we should seize the opportunity to take a new look at this age-old principle and confront the inherent contradictions.
Yeah, ordinarily I wouldn't bring up, this issue, but because the DNC and the Democratic Party leadership seems to have a compulsion to smear tens of millions of Americans with the racist label, I have to bring it up, that the largest monument to slavery is the Democratic Party. And actually a Democrat, I heard today on a video, he actually recommended that they need to to do away with the name and as much as possible dismantle the party because of the connection to slavery. The Democratic Party was the party of slavery. The Republican Party was started specifically to oppose the Democratic Party.
Do you know where the Republican Party started, Carl? Ripon, Wisconsin, of all places.
I saw a photo of the building where it started in.
Ripon, Wisconsin. Yeah.
Yeah, the most famous black abolitionist, Frederick Douglass, was a lifelong Republican.
So, the Republicans and the Democrats every year have their big dinner. And the Republicans' big dinner is called the Lincoln Day dinner, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's supposed to be right around Lincoln's birthday, but we never do it on Lincoln's birthday on Guam, because we never decide we're going to do it until Lincoln's birthday, and then it's too late. But the Republicans have the Lincoln Day dinner. Do you remember what the Democrats celebrated up until a couple of years ago? The Jefferson-Jackson Day dinner.
Yeah, that is coincidental.
Jefferson Jackson, who were the two heroes. In fact, actually, Andrew Jackson started the Democrat Party after he lost to John Quincy Adams. We really didn't have a well-developed two-party system until John Quincy Adams stole the election from Andrew Jackson, who, as a matter of revenge, started the Democrat Party. And Jackson has always been one of the stars of the Democrat Party, right up there with Thomas Jefferson. So they always celebrated Jefferson Jackson, but now, not so much.
Yeah, ordinarily I don't like bringing stuff like that up, because it is very partisan, but I just see
what's wrong with being partisan, Carl?
Well, it's not, really in my nature, but I just get tired of the party leadership constantly smearing tens of millions of innocent people with that label. And I have to point out the irony. Even after slavery, the Emancipation Proclamation, black Americans went through a tremendous amount of persecution and oppression by Democrats through the Jim Crow laws, through the formation of the paramilitary arm of the Southern Democrat Party, the KKK. It's over 200 years of oppression. So if they insist on, labeling innocent people that way, then, I think it's only fair that we point out the contradiction in terms. And since they're busy, they may say, well, that's in our past, it's not that way anymore. Well, these the statues, what they did was in the past too, but, it's being dragged forward. So,
that only works.
What's fair is fair.
That only works for some people. It doesn't work for everybody. It only works for Democrats.
Yeah, and you know, regarding this Declaration of Independence, I don't know if they've actually read the Declaration of Independence. It is a long, long, long list of complaints against the Crown, and the colonists had, the elected representatives had tried repeatedly to have those complaints addressed, and it was only after complete frustration that they finally decided, you know, this is the only way we're going to have to do it. We're going to have to go to war. But just one of the part of the Declaration of Independence, talking about the British Crown, and again, this is a long, long list. It said he has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. And I could go on and on and on and on at how brutal the British Crown was.
Hey, be careful of the word brutal. I think Laura Sauter has a copyright on that, Carl.
I was about to say I don't think she has a copyright, so I might as well throw it in there too, since that seems to be you know, the word of the day.
Let me read an interesting section of the Declaration here that kind of goes to what she's talking about. There's we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Now, you'd never get away with something like that today, but that's the way it was written. Deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them should be more likely to affect the safety and happiness. So if you actually pay attention to the words, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, in other words, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So are the separatists saying that the American Raj in Guam is destructive of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? I think that's right in there with Laura's brutality. So you know, it's interesting, easy to take the first couple of sentences of the Declaration of Independence, but leave out the separation part. And the Declaration, the words actually say, and then it goes on to say, prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable. Well, anyhow, Carl, I'm glad you got in here before the close of the program.
Yeah, thanks for allowing me to weigh in, Bob.
All right.